The following is a presentation of Moonlight Media Works. It's the Collins Janus Show right here on Moonlight Media Works. It is another installment of the show, and we have a jam-packed one for you today. A little later on in the program, we have our first guest, New York Times best-selling author and the host of the Press Box Chronicles on YouTube, Jeff Pearlman, a personal favorite of mine. Is going to be coming up a little later on in the program. Before we get into tonight's topics, I do want to touch on that a little bit. You know, with this show, this is obviously kind of branching out beyond what I do in my own line of work with, you know, sports radio and a bunch of other things I do. But to be honest with you, one of the goals that I really wanted to have with this show in its totality was to be able to showcase people and stories and topics that I think either A, don't get enough appreciation, or B, I just want to expose to more people and, you know, talk about things that I don't think always get talked about in the way I think they should be. And I think one of the things I love to do with any platform, and I try to do it at work and I try to do it in other avenues, is to showcase the people that I deeply admire or appreciate their work or things like that. And that's what I talk about. It's the stuff I care about on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, it was really cool because I've been a fan of Jeff Pearlman's work for many years, between his book about the '86 Mets, The Bad Guys Won. I had my own copy of Gunslinger when it came out about Brett Favre, you know, and he's done stories about Barry Bonds, John Rocker, you know, and the Press Box Chronicles show, which we talk a little bit about later on in the program, was something that, like, immediately it came across my YouTube feed, instant subscribe, follow these stories each week. I mean, he's talking about players that, you know, I know as a sports nerd are so fascinating. Like, he had a whole episode a couple weeks ago about one of the best defensive backs of his time, Lester Hayes, for the Oakland Raiders. And I mean, that guy was literally covered in stickum, but he was an incredible athlete. You know, and it was a great story that he did in depth. He talked about the 1984 Padres. These are stories that people, you know, if you're a casual observer of sports, maybe some of these stories don't exactly, you know, come across your timeline, so to speak. And we addressed that and talking about some of the more niche topics that, you know, Jeff has a chance to cover with this show. And it's what attracted me to it immediately, because a guy like Jeff is going to do the research. He's always known for doing the in-depth look at things. And, you know, I think he gets the reputation now on TikTok and on social media for being, just as he says at the beginning of the show each week on the Press Box Chronicles, the cranky, middle-aged sports writer who's seen it all and done it all. I mean, he definitely gives off that persona to a lot of people. But I have to tell you guys, I reached out to Jeff about a week or so ago. Actually, I think it was, yeah. So what I want to say, it was, I think, the 6th. And he's on the West Coast. I'm obviously here in Charlotte. He got back to me almost instantaneously, and I just sent it through his website at jeffpearlman.com. There's a little tab there where you can reach out to him. And I figure, through this line of work, you deal with a lot of people, and you imagine you're not going to get an immediate response from a lot of people. I work with, you know, agents and other people representing, you know, PR firms all the time, and you get used to, oh, we'll see if we can work you in, and knowing full well you're never going to hear from these people again. And obviously, this show is brand new. This isn't an established entity like anything else I've worked on previously. This is all me. If it's good, it's me. If it's bad, can only point at this guy right here. So I don't expect anybody to, you know, get back to anything with when it comes to requests for this. But Jeff was on the ball. We had we played email tag there for a little bit and finally got him on last night, the day after we're recording this, and this will air on Friday, you know, and I sat and I took my legal pad out the night he got back to me and said, yeah, happy to do it. I actually kind of panicked. I'll be 100% honest. I panicked because it's kind of like, you know, when you're out and you ask out somebody that you don't think you have a shot with and you expect to get, like, ghosted or just left on red or something like that. And you expect, okay, yeah, I'll shoot my shot. Whatever. It's not going to happen. Who cares? And then when they actually respond, you're like, oh, crap. Oh, no. Oh, I actually have to put up or shut up now. So I'm like, I spent the night before a show. So, I mean, for those that don't know, we do the Golf Shop radio show on WFNZ every week. It happens at 7 a.m. every Saturday morning. So I'm up late anyways on Fridays, but like I was past 2 o'clock in the morning sitting there scribbling out things going like, no, don't ask that. That's a stupid question. Like I could not put it down because if you appreciate what somebody does and you want to ask the questions that they aren't being asked about when they talk about some of these things, you may only get a handful of opportunities to talk to people like this. And in the case of Jeff Pearlman, you know, he's covered so many big stories, little stories in between, all these things that I have followed throughout his career. A lot of stuff that's stirred up a lot of conversations. So there's a lot to work with there. He's a guy that does meticulous research, interviews hundreds of people when he does his major books. You know, so I spent a lot of time putting this together. And by the time we finally got to it, I was just sitting here like going over everything. And full disclosure, I was kind of nervous because I wanted it to go well. I certainly do. And I'll let you know a little secret. A lot of you that have followed this channel and follow me personally know that I do this for a living. I talk on the radio for a living. I produce. I call sporting events freelance. I do a lot of these different topics. And I'm very comfortable on air, on mic, doing these things because that's the career I chose. That's what I wanted to do. It's what I've wanted to do, fortunately, since I was in high school. Didn't always know what shape, what kind of path and avenue it would take, but this is what I feel the comfortablest doing, the most comfortable doing, I should say, if I could speak. Yeah, just give yourself a credit for being able to speak on air and then use comfortablest as a word. Yeah, that's good. But in reality, I haven't had a ton of opportunities in this, you know, in the 10 years I've been working to interview people I've genuinely been a fan of. Or, you know, and golf people, and I don't mean this as an insult, and they don't take it as one. I didn't grow up a lot of the current golfers that we talk to or interact with the Golf Shop Radio show or anything like that. So if I go up to a guy like Wyndham Clark at, you know, the Truist in Charlotte here, that really doesn't bother me because it's like, okay, this is my job. Got to get a couple questions out of him. If I get some answers, that's great. But I've had a chance to talk to Jim Nantz. I've had a chance to talk to a couple people like that I've actually either watched or followed or, you know, bought a book from. And I'll tell you, to this day, I still get a little bit like this. And people say, really? You can get nervous about stuff like that? I'm like, absolutely. And I'll let you know a secret. I get nervous when I go do a baseball game on ESPN Plus, or I do one of these podcasts. I get a little jittery right before I start because here's the deal. Much in the same way when I was playing baseball, I would get worked up for a game. This is the closest thing I have to it. The first couple years I worked in radio, I did high school football. And there was a palpable buzz when you walked into the building at 6 p.m. Because at 6 p.m., that's when the pregame started, and it was like an hour and a half of pregame, and you're just like getting ready. You go set up in your studio. We had like 7 games on at one time, and there's nothing that replicates being, you know, a competitive athlete or anything like that in any other walk of life you have. And even if you weren't good, you still got the rush of being in there with your teammates and locked in. And Charlie is trying to make this segment about her. Hi, sweetie. Did you get all the shakes out? Okay. Love this dog. She knows that I'm sitting here doing this, and she's like wanting to feed. Here, come here. Say hi. Say hi. Let's see if I can adjust this. Oh, there she is. Hi, baby girl. Mm-hmm. Here, I'll let you sit back down now. Can't do a whole show with you on my lap like that. She's a bit big. She's not a lap dog. Not at 45 pounds. Not a desk chair lap dog. Let's put it that way. 45-pound dog probably doesn't work terribly well. But back to my point, we would do 7 games a night, and it was like guys running around grabbing scores. You're cutting highlights. You're doing this. You're doing that, and you're yelling things out like 24-5, 24-7. Like you're just yelling stuff. 24-5. I don't know where that came from. You just, it's a buzz. And I would walk in, and even if after I got promoted up to being one of the bigger games of the week, I would still get just a little bit of one. And after a couple years, it goes away. But anytime you're doing something new or doing something you really want to go well, at least for me, there's always that little bit of, okay, let's get going. Because once you're in it, there's no going back. This is the beauty of live radio. It's the beauty of live television. It's the beauty of live everything. If you screw up, there's no putting it back. You've already taken that toothpaste out of the tube. You might as well go forward. But the day that I stop getting those feelings is the day I don't want to do this anymore. Because to me, that means I don't care. Like, I cared about this interview that you're going to hear later on in the program going well. And I cared, because I didn't want to waste anybody's time. I'm a professional, or at least I try to be. But, it's also somebody I appreciate and I'm a fan of. So I have to say, I wanted it to go well. And I didn't want to just be like lobbing softballs. Do you like writing books? No, I didn't want to do that. Nobody wants that. I mean, and certainly not somebody who does it for a living, who interviews people and talks to people professionally. I mean, you got to come ready to go. And I'm really excited for you guys to see this interview. And it's funny, he immediately kind of disarmed the whole thing. Like, I don't even know if he knew that I was feeling that way. But I mean, from the opening jump, and I've never met Jeff. So the first time he and I ever interact is when we hop on this call, and it's about like a minute before I hit record. So, I mean, the second we get on and it's just like, okay, this is going to be fun. This is instantaneously. It cut all the tension of like, oh man, I'm sitting here fumbling through my legal pad, scared that I'm going to make sure I hit all the right lines and make sure I hit everything. It's like, it was so much fun. It was so easy. And like I said, Jeff is a really nice guy. I mean, the only time I'd met him, and, couldn't be more accommodating with his time, was interested in what I was doing, what we were doing here. And obviously I love the show. I'm in every week, and I'm going to tell you this, and I say it in the podcast, every Monday, when the new podcast or the new episodes of the Press Box Chronicles come out, I'm there. A lot of times when they're hitting like the first premiere part, when they hit, I think around noon is, I believe, most of the times when he drops them, I'm sitting there waiting for him to start. Don't tell my boss that. I mean, I'm still getting work done, but it's on the screen. It's there. I'm watching. So I'm really excited for you guys to see that. And Jeff did ask me off mic after we recorded the interview. He's like, what's the dream job for someone like you? Because obviously he knew my age and he knew what I was trying to do here. And it's funny he brings that up. And I didn't mean for this to go this long. I just realized I've spent more time on it. And I've got stuff here I'm going to run through before we go to that interview. But he asked me something, and I was actually struck by it, because he asked me, what is the dream job for you? And I said, to be honest with you, the dream job has changed so much over the years, I don't even know at this point. I thought at one point it was just to be on the radio. Well, I got to do that. And then I thought, well, maybe the dream job is to call games on TV and the radio. And I've had a chance to do that. And I guess the easy answer would be to say, do that and pay the bills, which, I am able to do right now. And, if I had more time to formulate the answer that I came up with, which is, I just want to be able to do things like this. Create content, talk about sports, talk about life, talk about culture, talk about movies, talk about the things I care about. Take the things I care about and be able to pay my bills, because that's really all it is, man. We're all just trying to get through life. We're all just trying to put something together that we can be proud of. Like, I'm proud of the work I do. Not everything. I'll sit there and crow about it till the cows come home. I'll call a baseball game and I'll sit there and go home and go, God, what were you thinking? Ground ball to third. Why couldn't you get the word out? But to me, that beats, I don't know, and I don't want anybody to be offended by this, but I never wanted to work a cubicle. I'm up all hours of the night, so up late doing podcasts with the guys I work with and stuff. To me, that's better than, sitting there a 9 to 5. Like, I'm working, I may not work 9 to 5 continuously, but I'll work from 10 to 12 doing something on my computer, and another here or there, and calling somebody at 11 or 9, or it doesn't matter. To me, the finished product to me is worth it, even if you're bouncing around. And I don't know that you can do this forever and you can do it the way I do it forever. I'm sure plenty of people would tell you can't, especially doing the live shows and stuff. And when I was in college, it was hard I just graduated college. I was still in the mindset because the way the last year of our college year of 2020, 2021 ended, that I didn't get all the rambunctious, obnoxious college kid going out till all hours of the night thing out of me. And for a couple years there, I was going into work on like 3 hours of sleep. It was a nap, if that. And it was hilarious because when I started doing it in my freshman year of college, I started doing morning radio, and that was 5 days a week. I just didn't know what to do. Like, I didn't know you can't work on a paper till 2 in the morning and then get up to go to work at 5:30. I made it work, and I don't encourage anybody to do it, but it worked for me, and it's kind of always been that way. I've always had late hours. I've always kept odd hours. I'm always up all night, and I'd rather sleep a little bit later on a day off or something because of that. But like, especially if you go do something live, if you're calling a game or something, I can't come down from that for hours. Like, if I call a basketball game or something at night and it ends around 10, good luck going to sleep before 3. I'm serious, because like my brain's just, the wires are firing off, things are going nuts, getting hit with a basketball, things are moving around. Like, I don't know how normal people interact and do what they do Monday through Friday. I respect anybody that's able to keep a roof over their head and pay their bills. That's all we're trying to do. I guess the way I would say it is to do the stories and talk about the things and, produce and tell other people's stories. That's one thing I really love to do, and that's why Moonlight Media Works exists. This wasn't just solely designed for me. I wanted to have other people and be able to help tell other stories. That's what we're able to do with the Be the Right Club Today podcast with Hal Sutton. That's what we're able to do with the Scale on Air podcast for Scott Clark Toyota. I mean, we do a lot of things here, and the point of it is I want to help other people see their vision through, and I also want to selfishly put my own visions out there. If I can't get somebody else to want to host the Collins Janus Show, well, guess who's going to do it? Me. I got all the stuff. Look, I got a camera, I got a mic, I got a logo. Look at this thing. My mom made this. My mom's a sweet lady. I got this fancy light from IKEA that my mom found. I mean, talk about fun. I was furnishing my new apartment, and my parents found a desk, and while they were looking, they found this thing. Look at this. You're supposed to put headphones on it, but I broke the news to them after they bought it, and I was like, well, they bought it anyways, but I was like, they were getting me a couple things for my apartment, and they bought that for me, and they got me this ring light. I'm like, now I feel like an influencer on TikTok, and that also comes up in the interview, and I'm proud to announce that I had never been on TikTok. I had waited way past the point of where it was cool to be on TikTok, so I figured I don't need another social media app. Everybody's on it, and to be honest, when Snapchat was first big, I was basically doing what TikTok is now, which is making videos and being obnoxious and doing that stuff when I was in high school. So I didn't see the intrigue in TikTok after I was already in college. But if Jeff Pearlman can be on TikTok and, sees a benefit to it, I said, you know what? Maybe it's time that the last horse crosses the finish line and I join TikTok. So I'm on TikTok now, and I'll post that at some point if you want to follow whatever the hell we post on there. But yeah, I got a ring light for this studio and this thing to hang. I basically hang hats on it, but I'm not going to do that now because my hair's a mess. And I wear a hat. I noticed this. This was a comment I got actually from my own grandmother who watched the show. She noticed the first episode I didn't have a hat on. And I was trying to do that to be, semi-official, because my mom and grandmother, they're not big hat people. I get that. They want me to show off my hair. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not entirely used to being looked at the entire time by a camera. So when I had my hair, no hat on the first episode, I'm sitting here going, fixing my hair, doing this, a little like that. And I think I even do it in the interview with Jeff, and I came to the realization I just can't stop fiddling with it while I'm watching it, because I'm sitting there going, oh, my mom's going to think my hair looks bad. And I tell my mom, my grandmother and stuff, please don't watch these. This is not for you. Like, it's going to be obnoxious. It's going to be silly. It's going to be vulgar. It's going to be whatever it's going to be. It's me, but it's just, you get enough of me at home or around y'all. Just don't watch some of these. But she was watching and she's like, yeah, you can't seem to sit still. I'm like, no, I can't. And I'm not used to it because when I'm behind a mic on a radio station, nobody can see me. I can do whatever I want. And I make good use of that. So there you go. That's a long, long intro, but we're very excited. You'll see the Jeff Pearlman interview at the end of the show. Great discussion. He's got a new book out now called Only God Can Judge Me, The Many Lives of Tupac Shakur. You can buy that book online, and we talk about that as well as we were also talking about the Pressbox Chronicles, which you can subscribe to on YouTube. I'll even drop a link to that channel in the description of this video. But now let's go to the rehash of some of the stories this week. See, I'm getting better at putting notes down. I did this in college when I hosted a radio show in college, but basically through work, I have what I need in front of me. This is more to keep me in line because I kind of have the wherever the wind blows attitude with this stuff. I guess first let's touch on the passing of Robert Duvall. You know, this is the absolutely shitty part of being in the information age is the second you find out that somebody passes away is because I see a guy trending on Twitter. And, you know, I'm on a lot of like social media accounts that post movie clips and other things. And I'm like, oh, wonder what Robert Duvall is up to, or what did they post? And then in the back of my mind, right as I was thinking all that, I'm like, wait, please tell me he's not gone. Please tell me he's not gone. And I go, and Twitter had like a meltdown or X had a meltdown that day. So I couldn't even immediately pull it up on my computer. I had to look on my phone, and then I see like the CNN app or I guess it's the Apple News app on my iPhone here. Because I don't even think I have any other I don't think I have any other official news apps on my phone. So Apple hit me up with Robert Duvall passed away. And I was just, and I get it. This is going to sound a tad, cliche. I never met the man, but there are very few people you'll come across in your life that you become a fan of, that you just become, locked in with. Like you become fascinated with learning more about him. And I'm like that with a lot of people. And Robert Duvall, to me, was on the Mount Rushmore of my favorite actors. And it changes a lot. But, with your likes of Pacino, with your likes of De Niro, Clint Eastwood, Robert Duvall, to me, at his best, was as good, if not better, than everybody I've ever seen. Because between just these 4 movies alone, Apocalypse Now, which is one of my absolute favorite movies, and The Godfathers 1 and 2, those are cinematic masterpieces that nobody's arguing about. They're great Francis Ford Coppola movies. I own them on DVD, Blu-ray, special edition, however many cuts they made of Apocalypse Now. I own them all. And then of Days of Thunder. And Days of Thunder is interesting because in this part of the world, Days of Thunder is still really celebrated as this really cool movie that came out of North Carolina at a really cool time for NASCAR. And it's funny, I've gone to the barn that was the shooting location for Harry Hogg's race car for Tom Cruise in that movie for Cold Trickle. And I have to tell you, it was kind of like you don't get a ton of like cool movie scenes anymore or sets. And that one still exists. They use a couple different. That one wasn't used for the inside of the barn, but it was the one they shot for the outside. There's all this stuff. And I've had a chance to talk with people that lived here during that time. And they talk about the memories of seeing, like being able to sit up on a hill far away and watch down onto the field where they were shooting parts of the movie and stuff. And obviously, it's a big part of the Hendrick Motorsports story because of what Rick Hendrick put up for the movie with all his cars and all the filming cars they put for that movie. And it basically tells that story of him becoming, the owner of Cole Trickle's cars by, being a car dealer here in North Carolina. And it's a very important movie to this part of the world. And if you're a NASCAR fan like I was growing up, it became a part of the sport. And I have to say, for the 4 movies I just listed, those are in constant rotation for me as movies I just enjoy. Like, I'm not sitting here saying, I'm not saying Apocalypse Now and The Godfathers 1 and 2 are anywhere remotely, on the same level of cinema as something like Days of Thunder. I'm not saying that. And I'm not going to give you the screen rant, dissection of all these things. But what I have always been, really hit by in all those movies was Duvall's performance. In Days of Thunder, he is, to me, he's the actual star of that movie. I know it's the Tom Cruise movie. I know it's after Top Gun and and Tony Scott, and it's a big production with Nicole Kidman, and that's where they met and all that. Robert Duvall is the star of that movie. You know, just he left the sport after a death of a driver. He's out in the fields of North Carolina, just minding his own business. Team owner trying to make a name for himself, brings him back out, puts him with his hotshot, open wheel racer from California. And I mean, it's a great story. And Duvall, being from where he was in the part of the world, a Virginia guy, really has that kind of like demeanor to him. I know he spent many of his later years in Virginia, so he really locked in on the, older Southern kind of dialect, and he nailed it, really. And he's, weirdly enough, he was born in San Diego, California, so he spent a lot of his life in Virginia, and you can tell it comes out. And those are the people that make up NASCAR. And what I really appreciate is you can see that in Robert Duvall. You can turn around, he's in The Godfathers 1 and 2 as this member of an Italian mob family, of the Corleone family in New York. And he plays that perfectly. He's the consigliere. I mean, he's the guy. He's the one trying to keep everything in order, trying to keep the business afloat, trying to keep Sonny from, getting out of control in the first movie. He's there for Michael, trying to, run the family in Michael's absence. I mean, he's doing all these things, and he plays it so subdued in much of those movies. And then you get to Apocalypse Now, where he's just a crazy leader of an air cavalry unit in Vietnam who's fascinated with surfing on R&R time. I mean, he jumps off the screen in all these movies. He could play it soft. He could play it over the top. He's in like The Conversation, another Coppola movie, for like 5 minutes, uncredited. And he's looming over that movie too. It's the best credit you can give an actor is that when they are on screen, you're immediately drawn to what they're doing. And with Robert Duvall and everything I've ever seen, and I don't pretend to have seen every Robert Duvall movie ever made, but I have seen enough of Robert Duvall on screen to go, every time he's on, eyes up, ears open, what am I seeing? What's happening? I'm fascinated by it. And I'm very sad for his family. And as a moviegoer, I loved watching his movies, and I continue to. And I think he was just a phenomenal actor. And I just wanted to take the time to say all that. And as we touched on at the top, the Daytona 500, big race, the thing that Cole and Harry Hogg were trying to win, they finally did in Rowdy Burns' car in that movie, happened last Sunday. And it was won by Tyler Reddick of 2311 Racing with Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan, getting their crown jewel victory. That's 2 crown jewel victories for 2311 now, with the win last season for Bubba Wallace in the Brickyard 400 and this year with the Daytona 500. Overall, I think moving the start time up did help the race a lot. Actually did pretty good numbers. I think it was the highest viewed in a couple years, at least to start a season. And with some actual momentum, it's really good to see 7,489,000 viewers tuned in, peaked at about 9 million viewers at one point on Fox. The weather was always a challenge at Daytona. It's always a challenge. I understand network execs always trying to push for later and later starts, but it was okay to get that one in the time frame they did, and the storm lingering was probably the impetus for it, but I don't begrudge going forward to do it like that for this race. I get they want the West Coast audiences to tune in at 3, but starting that race earlier got it going to the point where we were able to run that whole race, no issues with weather. It was great. And I think overall, the race itself was a success. Where it will be criticized will be the fuel straving and the running at half throttle that a lot of guys were doing, trying to make it last. And crew chief for Chase Elliott, Alan Gustafson, said, basically, I don't know what you do at this point to solve that problem. Because once the crew chiefs and teams figured out that you could run half throttle or save fuel and kind of go 3 wide and keep the whole field bottled together like that, nobody's going to break the pace of doing that and sacrifice their own race for somebody else's entertainment. And I admit, I don't think it was a huge problem until the last stage of the race, when the Toyotas had the lines blocked 3 wide and they were just kind of suffocating the field there a little bit. That was annoying. But overall, I think the finish, I'm glad it went green the way it did. And it proves this. This is a topic I always like to talk about. This proves that NASCAR is not rigged, at least in the favor of Chase Elliott. Because this is now the second time that Daytona could have thrown a yellow and given Chase Elliott a win at different points for the sake of a caution or the safety of the field. They could have used that excuse when Michael McDowell beat Chase Elliott a couple years ago. And then on this race, Chase is leading on the backstretch. There were cars that were coming off. And again, I'm glad they didn't do this. Preface it, I'm glad they didn't throw a caution for that. I wanted this race to finish under green. It did. And NASCAR in the tower made the right call to go, all right, finish this up. Everybody looks clear enough. And we got a wild finish out of it. And the second you saw Zane Smith dropping off behind Chase Elliott, I knew Chase was a sitting duck. Tyler Reddick and Riley Herbst, credit to them. Got a great bit of teamwork out of that, getting them up front and getting them to the win. It was a great finish. Overall, I think there are people that are going to say, well, the fuel-saving thing ruins it for me. They're the people that are like, the movie ending wasn't what I wanted it to be, so I hate the whole movie. I'm not going to go that far. I thought it raced well. I think the biggest thing is, after the messy offseason NASCAR had, to have this go down the way it did, have, Tyler Reddick get a win like that, 23-11 after all they went through in the offseason, suing the, taking NASCAR to court. There's a lot of momentum to be built off this. And I think going into Atlanta at Echo Park Speedway this weekend, they're going to have a lot of people that are like, okay, I'm willing to give that a chance. I thought there was some fun things playing out in that race toward the end. And a colleague of mine pointed this out to me a while ago. He's like, you're the fan NASCAR loves. You're the fan NASCAR wants. If they could have 100, if they could have however many of you, that they'd be set. Because, yeah, I've been following this sport since I was probably about 6 or 7. Probably about that long. I'm not going anywhere. I've gone through the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm not going anywhere. I may not love it the same way I loved when Tony Stewart was winning races in 2007, but I'm there every week. I may not watch every single lap of every single race every single week, but I'm following the stories. I'm locked in on the finishes. I know the points. I know the players. I know the controversies. I follow it all, and I love it. And it's a part of who I am. It's a part of where I live. It's a part of the fabric of this community. All that good, happy horse shit, I'm there. So I feel there's some good momentum going, good rating for Fox and NASCAR. So let's see what happens at Atlanta. I don't know why I was gesturing so much. I keep gesturing back to this painting. Love this thing. And then to touch on everything else, we're cutting a couple things here. We've got a couple things we're going to go through. 2 just awesome stories. 1, Team USA defeating Sweden in hockey for the first time in 66 years to get to the semifinal round with a matchup there. This is awesome. I was sitting in my office doing work, had the TV on, couldn't turn myself away from it. And it was phenomenal. I mean, it was a game that should not have been 1-1 at the end of the third, but at the end of the day, that could have easily ruined the entire thing for everybody, but the U.S. fought back. And Quinn Hughes, this is the beauty of U.S. Olympic hockey with the pros that we now have. The Team USA roster is so likable to me. And Quinn Hughes is a prime example of it. Quinn Hughes plays for the Minnesota Wild. He's one of the Hughes brothers. The others play in New Jersey. And as a Carolina Hurricanes fan, I don't like the Hughes brothers all that much as far as what they do with the Devils. I'm not a big Devils guy. Sorry. But Quinn Hughes, I've watched and admired from afar as a fan because he played over in Vancouver, didn't play in the Four Nations face-off last year. I've said this before, there's real palpable energy to hockey if you can get the right amount of buzz around an event. The Olympics is a perfect example, but the Four Nations face-off last season was the first time I saw so many casual viewers tuning into a hockey game. I went to QC Poorhouse here in Charlotte, one of my favorite sports bars. That's not a plug. It should be. I've donated enough work checks to that place over the last year that help a guy out. No, I'm just saying. I love going in there for sporting events to watch because you get so many great people. And Charlotte is such a city of transplants and other things that hockey on the surface doesn't make sense to here because we're not in Raleigh where the Hurricanes are. You're removed from everybody else. They have the minor league team, the Checkers. But for those Four Nations games, you put the Team USA game on, and it's still to this day the wildest crowd I've ever been in a sports bar for. Now, again, a lot of that has to do with the culture and the climate at the time. That game was USA-Canada. It was around the time there was all the talk about incorporating Canada as, State 51 and all that stuff that came out of all that. And, I'd be lying to you if it said it didn't play a little bit into the intrigue because obviously Canada didn't want any part of that, and they wanted to show us up in hockey. It's their sport. But the United States won that game. They won it in a physical manner. They were dropping the gloves in the opening minutes. And yes, they lost the championship game in the Four Nations face-off. But that was like a real tangible electricity to the game of hockey that I've never seen in this part of the world before. Now, I grew up in Raleigh for a period of time, and the Hurricanes had that when they won the Cup. And in the last couple of years, since they've been back to being a really phenomenal team, basically since 2017 on, with Rod Brindamore as head coach, there's tangible energy every time you go to a Hurricanes game. And that wasn't the case for a lot of years. But the Olympics showcases that to an even nth degree because it's now global and it's not just the NHL's product. And there are things you can dislike and like about the Olympics. I think the rink and the facilities is an absolute joke. I think anybody that's been following that has seen that they basically got this stuff up together with duct tape and a prayer, which I'm not sure how a host city can. There's too many instances of poorly planned Olympic host sites, but that was a mess. And the boards are a mess. The ice is what it is. The arena itself is kind of rinky-dink, and the locker rooms are whatever. I'm not an Olympic athlete. Who cares? But that game was great, and it set up a scenario where we could still get Canada versus USA. We could get, Slovakia, or we could get, Finland. I mean, to me, this is going to be a lot of fun. I think your Final Four, you've got Canada versus Finland, and you've got USA versus Slovakia. I mean, this is going to be a lot of fun. Hate that the championship game, the gold medal game, would be on like Sunday at like 8 a.m., but they play the bronze game after. I'm not sure how all that works. They wanted to get it in before the closing ceremony. I don't know. Just a bummer. And I remember, I believe, was it Sochi? I can't remember. It might have been when the time changed. You get up to watch some of those games, and it's what separates to me the Olympics, the Winter Olympics from the Summer Olympics. Everybody's a Summer Olympics game. I'm a Winter Olympics guy. I love, and I can watch casually the Winter Olympics better than I can the Summer Olympics because I like, the basketball for the Summer Olympics and some of that stuff. But for just I don't watch luge, but there it is. It's on the TV. I'm watching luge, or I'm watching, curling. I mean, to me, downhill skiing, speed skating. Spoke with Dan Jansen, Olympic winner for the United States many years ago in speed skating. I mean, he's got a great story. We talked with him on the Golf Shop Radio show just last week. To me, the casual viewing of the Olympics is better with the Winter Olympics. And right now, I got the medal count up here. Your top 5 in gold medals. Norway at 16 is leading. Italy is in second at 9. The United States is third with 8. France is fourth with 6. And the Netherlands, I guess it's a tie for fourth with 6 between France, Netherlands, and Sweden. I'm not sitting here saying I've been glued to my screen over every Olympic event, but between the Lindsey Vonn incident and what a terrible situation that was, the story of her even being there was so incredible. It's that's what I love to see. And I hate that it ended the way she did, but she went out in the most badass way possible. She knew she was hurt. She wanted to go for it. She hurt herself again, but you can't take anything away from her for what she wanted to do and wanted to go out on her own terms. And, that's the reality of it. That's what makes the Olympics such a really celebrated event, is people are willing to be like, yep, I don't care. I want to do this. I've been training all my life for this. Let it all hang out. And if you haven't tuned into any of the Olympic hockey, you need to tune in, because if you're even remotely interested in the game of hockey, these next 2 or 3 games are going to be must-see TV. So there you go. And lastly, I want to touch on this before we go to the interview with Jeff Pearlman. Van Halen, maybe your parents' favorite band, one of my favorite bands of all time, Eddie Van Halen, who left this earth about, it's going on 6 years this year. That's one of, by the way, we lost Ace Frehley of Kiss last year. Those are like the first 2 times a celebrity death like actually made me upset. Like I was bummed. Like it ruined my week. It ruined weeks of my life because I was bummed. Because when you obsess over stuff the way I do and you're a fan of stuff, you become infatuated enough to pick up an instrument because of these guys. When they pass away, it hits. It does hit. I never met them. I never will meet them. It doesn't matter. They mean a lot to the soundtrack of your life. They mean a lot to the influences of your life. Whichever. It all matters. Even if people tell you it doesn't. It does. So when Eddie Van Halen passed away several years ago, I was just beyond broken and beat up about it for weeks. And Eddie's son, Wolfgang, has been putting out some great music. But you knew it was the end. We knew we never got the proper closure with Van Halen. Because Eddie was this master, recording artist that sat around and would just put down hours and hours and hours of demo tapes. And if you've ever seen any footage of Eddie Van Halen's studio in the 5150 studios at his house, there were like bookcases and shelves of like tapes that he said he had put down on tapes for years since he had the studio. And none of it was filed or it was filed, and then a computer died and he didn't remember what it was. And you sat there and went, oh my God, it's like these ancient texts that if somebody could just bring them down, we could share them with the world and we could hear all the things we never got to hear. Well, Alex Van Halen, the drummer extraordinaire and brother of Eddie Van Halen, has come out this week, and I don't know if he meant to do it the way he did. He had already been talking a little bit about working on a project, an album, with Toto guitarist Steve Lukather, who was one of Eddie's best friends and a friend of the band and had an incredible session career and then running with the band Toto, about putting together an album. And we thought, okay, well, that's interesting because Al's said in the past he'd never play again with anybody drums-wise that wasn't Eddie. So is he putting together a new album with Steve Lukather? I don't know. And he wasn't very specific. He was promoting a book he had put out, Brothers, about his life with his brother Ed. And it's a cool story. I've never actually had a chance to read the book in its entirety, but the excerpts are, deeply personal and very interesting. But I believe he gave it away earlier this week, and the music publications picked it up and ran with it, that he is in fact working with Steve Lukather, I believe, on putting together some of these demos and things of unfinished music that Eddie Van Halen had put together in his life that already had like drums recorded by Alex, guitar by Eddie, bass by Wolfgang Van Halen. And they're just trying to figure out a vocalist and putting together the final pieces, to actually build something out of this unfinished music. And to a fan like me, who's just obsessed with these little details, that's awesome. I got to see that. I got to have that. I don't care what shape it's in. Give it to me. Let's have it. So we've gone a long way in this time of this show and the runtime and all the topics. That one I had not put on a bingo card. Wouldn't have predicted that we would be getting news about that in February of 26, but I'm here for it. Let's have it. So now we're going to throw it to the interview that I did with Jeff Pearlman. And again, if you guys like the show, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, get that first every week. Or if you subscribe to Spotify, you can also see the video feature of this show. If you're on Apple Podcasts, you can get the audio version and listen to it as well. Not sure yet. We're probably going to publish the interview separate as well because this episode is going to be pretty long. But if you want to hear the whole show with this interview and my preamble about what we talked about, you can keep it right here, and we'll turn it over to that interview now. So we'll be back next week, guys, with more. Enjoy this interview that I got to do with New York Times bestselling author and host of the Press Box Chronicles, Jeff Pearlman. We'll see you guys next week. Joined now by New York Times bestselling author and host of the Press Box Chronicles on YouTube, Jeff Pearlman. Jeff, thanks for the time today. First off, I want to congratulate you on the success of the Press Box Chronicles. I'm there every Monday waiting for the new episodes. For all your successes as a writer, I, like so many others, first discovered you from your appearances on TV or in documentaries. I remember watching you in countless things that showed up on MLB Network talking about the '86 Mets or the '90s Cowboys on NFL Network or on ESPN. How much do you think that public presence has impacted your successes over the years as both a writer and allowing you to do a video series on YouTube?
So I don't think, like over the years, especially when I started Sports Illustrated, they would encourage you, if you had an article come out and sports radio would call you, promote it on sports radio. Every now and then CNN would call or, whatever, some cable network would call and you'd go on. And it wasn't that big a thing. And you would do it. And when I started writing books, obviously you would promote the book by going on TV. For me, what really changed the game was 2 years ago, literally 2 years ago this month, I joined TikTok. And I wasn't going to. I decided to do it. My son was very much against it. I have a son in college. He's like, don't do it, Dad. I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. He's like, all right, don't talk politics and don't do filters. So I don't do filters, but I do talk politics. And TikTok, I didn't see it coming. It was a absolute 100% game changer. I don't know why. I have like 340,000 followers, it's still, I'm not saying this humbly. I don't really get it. But people like stories and they like old stories about sports. And because of TikTok, that led to the Press Box Chronicles, and it led to this company, 3.0 Labs, reaching out to me and saying, would you have interest in doing a YouTube series? And I wasn't really into it at first, but then I thought, yeah, I'll try it. And it's been really cool. So there you go.
Well, speaking about the show itself, I know you've been able to cover several stories that you've done feature-length pieces on, books as well. And then I know there are a lot of stories, especially just the one from this Monday that I was watching before we came on with Kenny Easley. They don't get necessarily the long-term, book deal or anything in a long-form format. Does doing this show open you up to do topics that you've wanted to do or found a niche interest in doing that maybe a publisher or somebody didn't see the interest in?
100%. I mean, the best example for me, I did one on the 1984 San Diego Padres.
Yes.
And the Padres are probably not a book that sells very well. Like it's 42 years old now. Team did not win the World Series. Its biggest star was Tony Gwynn, who's a big star, but probably not a huge book. And then you had like Rich Gossage and Greg Nettles and guys, but it's not. And people have said for years, I've been like, I would love to write that book, but nobody's going to buy it. But it was kind of perfect for a 25-minute breakdown. Same with like Dave Kingman. I did one of the biggest asshole in sports history, Dave Kingman. Dave Kingman probably isn't a book that sells, but it's perfect for 25 minutes. Ken Easley, probably not a book that sells, perfect for 25 minutes. So it really has like, number one, it's allowed me to take on subjects that fascinate me. J.R. Richard, the former Houston Astros pitcher. People aren't buying that book, but it's a good 25 minutes. So it's allowed me to be like, you know what? These subjects really interest me. It'd be really fun to delve into it. 25 minutes, perfect. So yeah, it's been really good.
Were there any episodes so far that you've actually dropped that you were really surprised by the immediate reaction? Because obviously to me, a guy like Dave Kingman, that has over 285,000 views already.
Yeah.
And to a baseball nerd like myself, we know Dave Kingman for, strikeouts, home run guy, kind of a model of what we've seen a lot of players coming past that. But I wouldn't expect, John Walmart to go, oh, yeah, Dave Kingman. I know him.
Yeah. I think it's a good question. I mean, I was saying to someone the other day, this is an unfortunate reality, and I buy into it as much as anyone. People like hearing about assholes more than they like hearing about good guys. Like, it's unfortunate, but it's true. It's probably human nature a little bit. Like, if someone tells you the story about Brad Pitt being a jerk to them on a plane, it's a lot more engrossing than the time I met Brad Pitt in the supermarket and he was really nice to me. Like, I don't know what it is about the human condition, but that's it. So, like, I did a Will Clark episode that also did really well, and it was kind of about what a douchebag Will Clark is. The one that was the most, I have two that were a little disappointing viewership-wise. One was Joe Delaney, the Chiefs halfback who drowned. That did not do very well, and I thought for sure that was going to do well. And then one of my favorite episodes I did was about Marcus Lattimore, the former South Carolina halfback, who is now a poet. And I thought, oh, this is going to do great. His story is so amazing, and it just did kind of meh. So I don't think I really fully understand, except I know assholes do very well.
Well, I mean, and that was the thing in watching it. It's like obviously the ones like Barry Bonds, the ones like John Rocker, stories that you're really identified with over the years. It's it's easy to see people want to flock to those, but like to your point, the 84 Padres, I think, might have been the first one I watched. And I was just, engrossed in the whole story. And it led to me going, okay, I've watched this. Now I have to figure out more about this team. Because obviously, the story of the Reader's Digest version of Tony Gwynn and those players. But to get it in that level of detail is what's so fascinating to me about this channel.
I mean, what I like, well, I appreciate that. Like, I just think it's cool. Like, how old are you?
27.
Right. So, like, the 84 Padres probably meant nothing to you. Like, you weren't alive when they were around. Maybe you knew a little about them, but not that much. So, I think it's cool. Like, kind of, I wrote a book about the old United States Football League. And it's not my best selling book. It sold pretty well, but not great. But, like, I really like the idea of people learning about this league they didn't know about, or maybe they'd heard of, but they didn't know the details of. It's kind of cool with the Padres and Kingman. Even if I don't want people to hate Dave Kingman, I just think it's cool to learn about these things and learn and understand it. So, I don't know. It's cool. I'm a sports history buff. I love old stories. I love telling stories. So it's been a good little marriage for me.
And obviously, you solicit at the end of the episodes each week for topics that the audience may want to suggest to you. So far, of the ones you haven't dropped, who's the one that you get the request for the most often?
That's a good question. We have gotten a lot of former Twin Lyman Bostock who died in a shooting in Gary, Indiana. Ron LaFleur was a Detroit Tiger who the Tigers found in prison. That's when we get a lot of that we're going to do. The thing is, every now and then I get one that is just like people will be like, you should do the 1980 Miracle on Ice Olympic hockey team. And those are the ones I find myself not doing because they've just been done too many times. And I like the niche. Like I did an episode on Mark the Bird Fidrich. And I felt like that guy's perfectly in my wheelhouse. I was a little kid when it happened. He was a weird guy who looked like Big Bird. And people remember him, but they may not remember him that well. So like Lester Hayes was another one we did. A lot of people wanted Lester Hayes, so we did Lester Hayes. So yeah.
My dad was a huge Raiders fan, so Lester Hayes was immediately the second that one popped up, I'm like, okay, we got to check this one out. So
cool.
There's a lot of those that I come across like that. But to be honest with you, where I first probably discovered your work as a journalist and somebody to take note of for the works on sports was, and this is an answer you probably get more than anything, it's the 86 Mets. Mm-hmm. And you've written several bestsellers, but the Bad Guys one seems to resonate really strongly even to this day. Do you ever feel yourself actively trying to put, past you with that story and telling that story? I always heard Axl Rose talk about when Guns N' Roses made Appetite for Destruction, he spent the rest of his career trying to put that album behind him and make something else. Do you find yourself trying to one-up yourself from that starting point?
So that's a good question. No, but I like to think that I've become a better writer as I've gotten older. Like that was my first book. I didn't really know how to write a book. I definitely know how to construct a book better now than I did then. So I remember years ago, Eminem had an album out called Rehab, and he was shitting on the album years later. He was like, it's not a good album, blah, blah. And I always think like there are people out there who love Rehab and they hate hearing him shit on his album. So like sometimes I'm a little surprised when people say, oh, Bad Guys 1, that's the best. I love that book. That's my favorite book because I don't feel like it's my best book, but I actually get it because there was so much joy in that team and the stories were so great that you would have to be a really bad writer / journalist to screw that one up. Like it's not my best writing, but the stories are just so awesome that I do understand it. And being from New York, having grown up with that team, I don't really get tired of talking about it. Like if it were Roger Clemens, I might be like, enough. But like, I love the 86 Mets. I love Dwight Gooden. I love Gary Carter. Like I love all that stuff. So it's cool to me.
And explain this if you can. I'm a Red Sox fan. I've mentioned already I'm 27. I was not alive when that run was on. Why do people like me to this day why are we still so fascinated by that team?
I think multiple reasons. Number one, they just they were dead. Like, have you seen Game 6 of the 86 World Series? It's the most remarkable. But I'm sure as a baseball fan, you can appreciate the remarkable nature of that comeback. And okay, I'm not just saying this for effect. Sometimes I'll be at the gym and I'll put on that game in the final innings. There's always a part of me that thinks they're going to lose. There's always a part of me that thinks they're going to lose, even knowing how it ends. It is so remarkable that I've just never seen an ending like that. Number two, they were so New York. Like that team was so 80s New York. Like 80s New York in the 80s was like strip clubs and dirty and graffiti all over the subways. And that was the 86 Mets. They were like grimy and they were kind of gross and they drank too much and they snorted a lot of coke and they were out at the bars. So I think New Yorkers could really, it was the last really championship team that you felt a connective tissue toward. So I think that's what it was about the 86 Mets.
A lot of the nature of the works that you've done across your career breeds a lot of discussion, a lot of controversy. And I know you've documented some of the more notable ones on the channel as well. Has there ever been a scenario where you're actually working on one of the longer piece books like, Gunslinger or, Sweetness or something like that, where you got active pushback in the process of making it to the point where you're like, I'm not sure I'm going to get through this, or I have to get more creative to figure out how to tell this story without getting it? I know for Gunslinger, you never even had a chance to speak to Favre.
True. But the beauty of that was I reached out to Favre's sister, Brandy, on Facebook, and I told her I'm working on this book. I don't know if your brother's going to talk. I'm going to be in Mississippi. And she said, well, let me know when you're down here. And when I texted her when I was in Mississippi, and she said, well, just come by the house. We're all at the house. And I ended up interviewing her. So Brett Favre's sister, Brett Favre's mother, Brett Favre's brothers, like I got everyone in the family. Every book I've written, there have been people who haven't spoken. Every book. 86 Mets, Gooden and Strawberry didn't talk. Cowboys, Emmitt Smith, Trey Aikman didn't talk. Roger Clemens didn't talk. Favre didn't talk. The thing is, what you learn in this business, I think, is there's always a million different people around them who had the experiences of being close and personal. And you just tap into those the best you can. So I've never, like Tupac was the hardest book I've ever worked on. Obviously, I can't talk to Tupac, he's dead. But I've never thought like, this is impossible, I can't do it. I just always think, all right, who's next? Who am I going to talk to next? And you just keep going.
And speaking of that book, Only God Can Judge Me, The Many Lives of Tupac Shakur, it was said, I believe, that you interviewed over 600 people in the process of writing that book. If you can, take me through the process of curating down 600 people's worth of testimonials and stuff. Because obviously, if you're not getting a Tupac Shakur, for obvious reasons, I imagine you're not getting gems from all 600 people, but there's probably something to be garnered from a large majority of them.
Yeah, well, the thing is, okay, so I interviewed, I think the number is 652 or something like that, but you interviewed 600 people. That means you're calling 1,000 people or you're reaching out to 1,000 people because you'll probably have 400 are going to be like, no, or they're dead or they're unavailable or whatever. So you interview 650 people. And what I really do is I take it stage by stage of a person's life. So just as an example, Tupac went to the Baltimore School of Performing Arts. So what do? I find the old yearbooks from the 2 years he was there. And you don't just call the people in his class. You call the principals, the different teachers, different people in different classes. You may interview someone who is in math class with him, and that person might be like, oh, I didn't really know him that well, but you should call Jenny because Jenny used to hang out with him. Well, you call Jenny, and Jenny's like, oh, who you should talk to? Michelle and Steve. They were like his running buddies in high school. And all of a sudden, you have all these tentacles of people to talk to. And you're basically taking it stage by stage. When it got to his music career, I made sure to get all the old liner notes from his CDs. So all the notes with all the thank yous and the producers and everything. And one by one, you just start calling them and reaching out to them. And they might be like, no, I didn't work with them that much. But you know who did? The sound engineer, Barry. And that's how it kind of goes. And early on in my book career, I came up with this sort of philosophy, which is like, when I was a kid growing up in Mahopac, New York, there was a kid who was a senior when I was a freshman named Dave Fleming. And Dave Fleming went on to pitch for the Seattle Mariners. And he's probably the most famous guy from my hometown. I never talked to Dave Fleming, except one time. I was on the bus freshman year. He usually didn't take the bus. He took the bus one day because his car was broke down. I said something to him. It was a trivia question. I still remember what I asked. He responded. Why do I remember that all these years later? Because he wound up pitching for the Seattle Mariners, and it embedded in my head. So my whole thing is like, maybe Tupac wouldn't have remembered the guy who was in the studio with him for 2 days. But the guy who was in the studio for 2 days is going to remember his interactions with Tupac. So that's why I cast this very wide net. Same with sports. Like the free agent running back from Delaware State in camp with the Packers for 2 weeks. Brett Favre probably wouldn't have remembered that guy. But that guy sure as hell is going to remember the one time Brett Favre kneeled down to tie his shoe as a joke. So that's sort of how I go.
And obviously, Tupac, the question I have coming out of that is, do you see this as like a one-off in that area? Because I know you've been dealing with a lot of, pushback from certain people. I've followed the stories on Instagram
Yeah.
recently, and this is a venture outside of the sports realm, and, you're getting a lot of that kind of pushback on different areas than I would imagine you get from, a famous athlete or somebody. Do you see this as a one-off, or do you want to explore more opportunities, to write stories outside the sports realm?
Well, I don't see outside of sports as a one off. I love the idea of writing different things. I would say hip hop is probably a one off for me.
Okay.
I think there was a lot of understandable to a certain degree backlash of who is this guy, sports writer, white guy, rural New York, writing a Tupac book. Like I do understand that. And I can't say I enjoyed it. I loved writing the book. I loved reporting the book. I hated promoting the book. I did not enjoy that experience very much. The backlash was pretty intense. A lot of threats, some death threats. Like I don't really need that shit in my life at this point. And there's so many others. I would love to do. I said to my agent the other day, I would love to find a murder mystery and do it. Like use the skills you learn as a sports reporter, then writing books and Tupac even, and explore an unsolved mystery and dig deep into it. I would love to do different singers. I'd love to do. I like the idea of trying different things. But I think I'm not going to be doing the Kanye book or the Biggie book. I think
Right.
Tupac is probably my only hip hop book, and I love hip hop, but it's probably my only hip hop book.
Well, and I guess it brings me to this point, which is there a through line to the people that you've chosen to do these longer pieces on? Is there a commonality, a common thread? I know you talked about it a little bit earlier on, that especially for the sports stories you focus on now with the Press Box Chronicles, it's more of the niche stories, not looking for the 1980 Olympic U.S. hockey team. Is there a through line to these people that intrigues you enough to be like, okay, I have to dig deeper on this. I'm curious to learn blank.
I think it's people. It's a good question. I mean, people used to say about me, they'd say, you only write about controversial figures. Oh, you only write about controversial figures. And I'm always like, nobody is asking for the Mike Piazza book. Nobody's asking for the great Josh Allen biography, right? Like, I always say, okay, I always put it this way. This is the best way to explain it. I've thought about this a lot. It's a really good question. There's a reason a Brett Favre book sells and a Joe Montana book doesn't. And it's because say what you want about Brett Favre, and there's a lot of negative about Brett Favre. Say what you want about the guy. He moved people in a guttural way. Like he inspired people. He was gritty and raw and real, and he was tangible. It's the same thing with Tupac. When the rapper Shock G, the late rapper Shock G, once said, a lot of rappers rap from their mouths or from their throats, and Tupac rapped from his stomach, right? The New York Mets, the 86 Mets, like the 86 Mets are a lot more interesting, in my opinion, than like the 98 Yankees. Why? Because they were raw, and they were visceral, and they were drunk, and they were snorting coke, and they were fucking hookers. Like, they were you, they were us, they were like, so I think what I'm really drawn to, honest to God, are people like, who really move you. And like my least favorite book I've worked on is the Roger Clemens book. Because in hindsight, what I realized about Clemens, I've said this before, if you did a scan of his brain, it would be breasts, baseball, sleep, food. Breasts, baseball, sleep, food. If you ask that guy, like, what's climate change? He'd be like, oh, it's just a hoax. If you ask him, like, what do you think about poverty in Ethiopia? He literally probably wouldn't know that Ethiopia is in Africa. So I like Bonds didn't sell well, but Bonds was an interesting, kind of passionate subject. And those are kind of what I like.
Well, and it's funny bringing it back to Gunslinger. I can see that I
Oh,
have
look at that.
my well-loved copy. No
Nice,
idea
man.
where the original cover went to
All
it.
good.
And
Yeah.
I was reluctant to bring it up because, originally I had the question here, basing it off of this book and contrasting it with the Roger Clemens book. Does your opinion of a book, have to matter on the subject matter itself, or can you appreciate a work like that for its time when you did it? Because obviously, a couple years ago, and I double-checked this because I had forgotten all about this, after the Brett Favre story breaks with the welfare and obviously in Mississippi, that changes, your attitude toward the book in some regard, and you kind of distanced yourself from it a little bit. But are you able to still look back on a book like that, like you just did there a moment ago, and appreciate the work that you did at the time?
Yeah. Also, I wasn't, it wasn't that I was distancing myself from the book. I was basically trying to make a statement on Brett Favre that he's a piece of shit and don't waste your time reading about this asshole. I'm not saying the book wasn't, I'm proud of the book.
Right.
I think I reported that thing well. Like I feel good about that book. I do think like, yeah, like I don't go back and think fondly about Brett Favre because now I know there were things I didn't know that maybe I should. Well, it didn't happen when at the time, but like the whole
Right.
Mississippi alleged welfare scandal, like that certainly changes the way you feel about a subject. Um, yeah, I don't know, but to me, mostly, like all the books. I don't want to sound corny, but like all the books symbolize a time in my life, a time period in my life, not just about the subject, but like how old my kids were, where was I living, what was I doing, where was my head at, and I look back at them all almost like you would look back at a diary of your own life, where do they take me, the cool places I went because I got to report those books, which is kind of neat.
And then lastly, this is one that I think is going to become more present as we go forward, I guess through time now, is through so many of these stories, myth and lore play such a large part of, our appreciation, our intrigue, our hunger for some of these stories. Do you believe it's still possible for, lore and mythology to kind of surround sports stories like an 86 Mets, like, a Barry Bonds, when we're now in the information age? Like I can tell my kid, oh, I saw Mike Trout play and there's 100 clips of Mike Trout existing on YouTube. There's probably hundreds of thousands of more on the internet, or, Shohei Ohtani. I don't have to like mythologize,
Mythological.
excuse me,
Yeah,
good Lord,
yeah.
that kind of figure. But, for the stories that I am fascinated by, the ones that you've obviously made a career of doing and talking about, there's a lot of mythology there, especially with like a guy like Bo Jackson. Is that even possible anymore?
So it's a good question. I feel like reporting is more important than ever because you see less of it and less of it, right? And the Skip Bayless, Stephen A. Smithization of sports media, where it's all opinion, it's all opinion. This is what I think. That's what I think. Bark, 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 yap, yap, yap. I do think hard nosed, thorough reporting can still break down mythology. For example, you mentioned Mike Trout, just an example. Like, you're right. You're going to see clips of Mike Trout dating back to high school, maybe middle school. Someone took a video of it, posted online. There it is on TikTok and Twitter and all that stuff. The reporter, though, is still going to call Mike Trout's uncle. And Mike Trout's a Little League teammate. And maybe Mike Trout's a Little League teammate remembers this time Mike Trout had a cast on his arm, but he still hit a home run. Or you find the girl in seventh grade who kissed Mike Trout for the first time, and he was a gentleman and walked her back to her house and blah, whatever, making this stuff up. But like, it's still out there. It just takes reporting. And what makes me a little bummed out is you have fewer and fewer, not just people reporting, but places to report to. I mean, the Washington Post just eliminated their sports section the other day. So like Candace Buckner, Kent Babb, Chuck Culpepper, on and on and on, all these great reporters don't even have a place to report anymore. So great reporting can still uncover great material. It is harder than ever, and you have fewer people doing it. That's the thing. And it's funny because people will say like, oh, you're one of the best reporters in America, Jeff Pearlman, best sports reporters. It's not true. Like there are a million better reporters than me. There are reporters who are much better sorting through old documents, finding old papers, finding old records. You just don't have as many people do it anymore. So the people who do it even moderately well stand out.
Well, Jeff, I really appreciate the time to have this conversation with you today. And if people are interested in keeping up with you, I would imagine you want to direct them to your website and obviously to YouTube for the Press Box Chronicles. Is there anything you want to go ahead and let people know that you've got coming?
You can follow me on TikTok at Jeff Pearlman author. I think it's super weird. I don't even there's never a point. If you'd said to me X number of years ago, you're going to be on a podcast in a couple of years and you're going to be telling people to follow you on TikTok, I'd probably put a rope around my neck, but that is where I am nowadays. So that's just life, man. But yeah, thanks for having me on.
We all got to go. Yeah.
Do what you got to do, man. The one thing I always say is as you get older in this business, I'm 53, you have to adjust to survive or you're just going to vanish. And I said this the other day to someone, a peer of mine, it's hard to hang on. And like, you got to fight to hang on, and you have to adjust to hang on. So like, TikTok was an adjustment. The YouTube show was an adjustment. Podcasting is an adjustment. But I still love this business enough that's worth doing. So here I sit.
The preceding episode was a production of Moonlight Media Works.